This is Gen X Amplified episode number 13. And on today's show, we are actually going to have a great chat all about those millennials. Yeah, that's right. And also why it's important for Gen Xers to understand the different expectations of their Gen Y colleagues so you can become better leaders in the marketplace. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
People will want to hook themselves to you. Younger people are going to want to hook yourselves to you. And the most relevant you can be in the business place, the most relevant you can be is being known for working with younger colleagues.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified, where we bring you inspirational and entertaining conversations with successful Gen X leaders and entrepreneurs.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials to help you amplify your story,
Maximize your impact,
and become Gen Exceptional in business and in life.
Now, here's your host, Adrian Porter.
Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of Gen X Amplified. I'm here. I'm happy. You know why I'm happy? Because you are listening to this podcast. That means you took time out of your day to listen to Gen X Amplified. And I must say that means a lot to me. So to my listeners, I love you. I'm wishing you well. I hope you guys are out there building your brand, building your personal development, finding your strengths, amplifying those strengths, becoming better leaders, better fathers, mothers, parents, all that good stuff. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. So let's get into the show. Now, we cannot have a show called Gen X Amplified without discussing the importance of working with millennials. Well, today we're going to do just that. That's because my guest is affectionately known as the millennial whisperer. I guess I should say millennial whisperer. That's probably even better, right? Add a little sound effect to that. Even though she actually is a boomer. She is an entrepreneur, communication strategist, and the CEO and founder of Forte. Her mission is helping people create positive intergenerational work teams. And she is the author of the book, Millennials and Management, The Essential Guide to Making It Work at Work. Now, even though she is a boomer, I still consider her to be Gen Exceptional. Please welcome Lee Caraher to the show. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Adrian. It's so great to be with you. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure at all. And actually, it's weird. When I first heard about you, I was like, I cannot wait to talk to Lee because you are passionate about, first of all, anybody that's passionate about generations and working better with each other is okay with me. And millennials, understanding millennials is so important. So we have a lot to discuss. Now, are you in the Bay Area?
I am. I'm in San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay, so I guess I need to extend a little congrats to your Golden State Warriors for
yes, absolutely.
Yes, okay. I know. Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm a Laker fan, so.
Oh. Okay. I'm sorry. Because we won.
That's okay. So Lee, as I mentioned earlier, you are passionate and done a great job at really framing the conversation of working with millennials, knowing everything that it is to know about millennials. And so being on Gen X Amplified is so relevant. But before we really dig into the Gen Y, if you will, I'd like to start, Lee, briefly with your personal story.
Sure.
And your journey and just basically how what you've done laid the foundation to what you're doing now with being the Millennial Whisperer and with your company. Sure.
So I graduated from college. I'm actually the last year of boomer, so I consider myself a cusper between boomers and Xers, just so you know.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Number one. So I've been in the communications business since I got out of college. I have a degree in medieval history, which, is very relevant. Mm-hmm. And I got right into PR out of college, and have sort of been in that career since then, since 1980. I won't even say it. 1987.
Okay.
It's been but that business has changed so dramatically, particularly in the last 10 years and even faster in the last 5 years. And I guess there's two inflection points in my career that gets me to where I am today. One is I was working for a very large multinational holding company that had many, many different advertising firms and PR firms in it at 9/11. And 9/11 happened and sort of brought it all home to me that I did not want to be on a plane 100,000 miles a year. And didn't want to be flying around the country. I had about 600 or 700 people working for me at that time.
Okay.
And mostly I was on a plane. And 9/11 just like, you know what? I need to be home. I want to be working. I had 2 young kids then. I don't like this job, so I probably do a job that I like.
Excuse me. Were you still living in San Francisco?
I was in San Francisco.
Okay.
But I had been on. I had flown home from New York the week before 9/11.
Oh wow.
And so it was just, everybody in San Francisco knows a couple people on those planes, and it was just really brought it home. Like that could have been me.
Yeah.
And did I want to be spending my time doing things I really didn't like doing? So that was the first inflection point, and I decided to leave that company after. I had executed my contract. I figured out a succession plan. Blah blah blah, and I was really going to go work for a company. There were a couple of companies that talked to me about coming to them, and I was very interested in that. After taking some time off, I really wanted to take some time off. So I took some time off, and I drove my husband crazy. Basically, is the bottom line there. And
how much time did you take off?
I was intending to take a whole year off.
Okay.
I ended up taking about 4 or 5 months off until I got to the point we had a mommy dearest moment where I was wondering about why there were socks that weren't matched in the house. It was very terrible.
Mommy dearest.
And he said, "You have got to go back to work today. There'll be no waiting." Wow. And so I was talking about going into companies. And
did you have wire hangers in your closet at the time?
No wire hangers, but
okay.
lots of socks that were not, single socks, the bane of our existence, right?
Okay.
I was very focused on a single sock, which tells you how much time I had on my hands.
Got it.
So I was very focused on not doing the agency work again, looking at other jobs. And then my mother, this is the second inflection point, my mother got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer with sort of 3 or 4 months to live. And I was in 2 job hunts at the time, and I pulled myself out of them because I was going to go be with my mom, who lived in Wisconsin. I was in California. She was in Wisconsin. And I was going to be with my mother no matter what. And you can't, for the jobs I was looking at, there was no possible way I could be in Wisconsin and in California or Washington at the same time.
Right.
At the same time, I am the breadwinner in our house. My husband works half-time, and we call each other, I'm the CBO, the Chief Bacon Officer, and he's the Chief Home Officer.
Wait, did you say, you said baking or bacon?
Bacon.
Oh, like
bacon.
Like bacon, Oscar Mayer bacon.
Like bacon, like Oscar Mayer, bring home the bacon officer.
Got it.
He's the Chief Home Officer, and he is a Gen Xer, by the way.
Okay.
And he said, it's very clear, 2002 was just a tough time, right? It was just, the market was terrible.
Yeah.
And that I needed to work, and so I started my agency sort of I became an entrepreneur by necessity. Because I needed to bring home the bacon.
Right.
And I needed to be able to be in Wisconsin and take care of my kids and all these things. And the only way I knew how to do that was to open my own agency, which I did with a good friend at the sort of the back half of 2002.
Okay.
And that was 13 years ago. And when I opened the company, I had really no thought of it being, I sort of just thought of it like, I don't know, we'll just be an agency and things will happen. And here we are 13 years later. And the company has got, and those things became very crystal clear to me at 9/11. And then again with my mom, got diagnosed, which was in May the next year, or April the next year, was, currency is often just means money, right?
Right.
But to me, there are many different currencies, and I cared about all of the currencies that I cared about. So it was time, it was flexibility, it was location free, it was doing work I like to do, it was working with people I like to work with. All of those became currencies to me. And so I created the agency that I have now, which is now in San Francisco, New York, and in Boston, and has about 35 people, based on all those currencies, so that the currencies that matter to me also matter to a lot of other people, and that I wanted to have an agency where all those currencies could sort of mix and match to create great opportunity for people who really like to do great work, but at the same time wanted to have full lives.
Right. Interesting. Wow. So there was a lot there that I want to talk even further about, because first of all, I remember I was actually living in New York during 9/11, and
oh my goodness.
because I moved there in 99 after I graduated from graduate school, and I lived there for 10 years. So it was a tough time, and like you, I could have been on that plane. I was working at Citibank, right across the river in Queens, right across from Manhattan, and I was in a tall building at the headquarters for credit cards, and I remember getting off the subway that morning, and everybody that worked in that big building was outside because the security guards, they weren't letting anyone in, and at the time I'm like, what's going on? And I heard the news. It was crazy, and everybody that was back home, because I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, so all my parents and family members, they were calling, they couldn't get through. So that moment was a very critical moment for a lot of people. And for you, I mean, like you said, that was your livelihood. You spent a lot of time,
I did.
in transit in the air, and then you hear about these two planes going in. So that was very interesting. So that was that first moment. And then the second moment was hitting really close to home with your mother. When you decided to start your agency, Double Forte. Was it called Double Forte at the time?
It was from the beginning.
Okay. So when you started your agency, you said the back end of 2002. Now, what was that feeling like? Did you start it based on all of your experience? Like, did you feel confident? Did you feel petrified? Did you what was that moment like when you decided, all right, I've had enough of these single socks. I have to bring more bacon into the home, and I have to really make this happen. Like, what? I mean, obviously those things were the motivating factors. But at the moment that you decided to, okay, it's green light, straight ahead. How did you feel?
I felt terrified and optimistic all at the same time, which I think is healthy.
Okay.
Because if you're just optimistic, if you don't have a healthy dose of, some sort of realism, but you have to be optimistic to be an entrepreneur, for sure.
Right.
I felt, I'd had a lot of experience. I had started an agency for this big holding company that I worked for. So I learned some stuff on someone else's dime. I had a very big network because I'd been in the Bay Area and in this business for a long time. And really it got down to, I knew that there were people who wanted to work with me, who I hadn't been able to work with at my big firm because they just didn't have big enough dollars. I knew that I'm good at what I do, so I'm really confident about what I do. And I actually like the job. I actually like the work of figuring out what to say to whom, how, when, all that kind of stuff. But in my last job, I was really just managing all these people flying around, just talking to people literally on a plane every week, back and forth to New York, back and forth. I had 13 offices, etc.
Wow.
So it was just, I wasn't doing the work. I was sort of like overlooking it. And that was not as fulfilling to me. So when I did the pros and cons of everything was, I wrote a list of, can I do this? And why do I think I can do this? And so I wrote a list of the 12, it ended up being 12 people I would work with no matter what. If they came to me and said, Lee, we have $1, or Lee, we have millions of dollars, I would drop everything and work with again, because they're just such great people. They have great, they're authentic, they're honest, they have a lot of capacity for great imagination. I just know that, and I knew I could help them. So I wrote that list of 12 people I would work with again, no matter what. The list of people I would never work with again was much longer. But, and I sort of took inventory of those people, and I just sort of made phone calls, and I said, I'm thinking about this. what do you think? And 3 of them said, when can I sign up? So that was very affirming. Of course, it took much longer for them to sign up than like that phone call.
Right.
But I think that I wrote the list of why I thought I'd be able to do it. I wrote the list of what could get in my way. And the things that could get in my way were things that I could manage. Like I can't manage the economy. I can't manage my value. I can't manage, what other people are going to do. I can manage what we deliver. I can't manage, whatever the things I couldn't manage. I found a counterpoint of what I could control. And I just felt confident, nervous, very excited. And, I put a plan together that sort of charted me through the first, I guess, 150 days. And, my friend and I, Dan and I, who I have since bought out, he wanted to go to a much larger firm. I don't care to be very large anymore.
Okay.
My firm, I don't, maybe we'll get to 50, but that's about it. He wanted to big. And we're great friends still. But we charted out a plan, and basically we hit every milestone for those first 150 days because we had done this work for other people. This was turning our own skills on ourselves. And it was very, you're paying the bills, man. You have, it's like, and today I have 35 people, and that's 35 mortgages or rents or whatever it is. And I feel a great responsibility for it, but I also feel a great optimism for what we bring to the table and how it's different than other people.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's exciting to hear about, how you felt when you started Double Forte. And it was really driven by your redefinition of currency, which I love. It's more than money. You mentioned time, I believe flexibility, location free, and I guess more importantly, working with people you like to work with.
Yes. I mean, you can't put a price on that. And so my agency today, we have 4 rules of business. The first rule is somebody other than myself has to be interested in the business who wants to work with us because I'm interested in everything. Terrible filter. Oh, look. It's a screwdriver. We can do fabulous things with a screwdriver. I'm terrible. So and I just think you do a better job when you're interested in it, right? So someone other than myself has to be interested. Number 2 is we have to be a great fit. We have to have the right expertise. We have the right experience. Most importantly, we have to have the right chemistry because you can be a great client and a great agency and just suck together, frankly. You have to pay us. We like to eat. And number 4 is you got to be a good person.
Right.
And that's actually a different word if I knew you better, Adrian. But it's not safe for work. Okay. But those are, those rules are the benefit. Those rules are business limiting, life enhancing rules because we could say yes to everybody who knocks on our door, and I probably wouldn't keep my staff as long as I do. And B, I wouldn't like my life as much as I do. And that would be the currency of only money matters. Right. So, it all sort of is ecosystem of making those rules work for us. And, once you get to a certain size, the good news about getting to a certain size is every time you add a person, you add an interest, right? Right. And the definition of people treating you well, there's some mandates in there, but some people get along better than other people. And you can, if with a big enough team, you can move people around so that you can find a good fit. Oh, that's absolutely right. So, the company now, what type of clients would you say are your typical clients? Like what type of industries? So again, someone has to be interested. So it's pretty eclectic for an agency our size. We work with food companies like Cliff Bar and Company, and we've worked with Pete's Coffee and Tea and Mission Tortillas and Fresh Express and Chiquita Banana and that kind of stuff. We work with sports gear and hydration gear companies like Camelback, the water bottles and the hydration pack. Right. We work with a lot of video game companies. A lot of us have that background, and then we work with consumer technology companies or consumer services companies that are mostly online. So retailers, services online, financial services online.
Wow, that is pretty
wide-ranging. Wide-ranging.
No, it is. If
you're trying to reach a consumer audience. Or a regular person in the workplace. So not the IT guy, but me in the office. We are really good for that kind of work.
Cool. No, that sounds great. Now, under that umbrella, or separately, now what made you focus your mission, I should say, with working with millennials? Like, how did that start, and why did you decide to do that?
So when we started the company, we decided only people with 10 years of experience. One, because it couldn't swing a dead cat in San Francisco without hitting lots of those people.
Of course.
Who knew what they were doing. We wouldn't have to train them and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And then in 2008, in the next downturn, I was really planning, we had about 18, 20 people then. I was really planning to start working 3 or 4 days a week. And I was literally September 13th, I'm going to work 3 days a week, 4 days a week. I'm going to horseback ride with my son. It's going to be awesome. The 14th, which was a Sunday, I figured out how to do it, what work was going to move. And then the 15th was when everything imploded in the market.
Okay.
So literally by, California time, by 10 o'clock, I was back to 4 days a week. By 10:30, I was back to 5 days a week. By 11, I was back to 6 days a week. And by the end of the day, I was like, it'll be a miracle if we keep going at 7 days a week of work. Because everything just cratered. We had 4 companies who were looking for money that week. And I'd been through, this is my 4th downturn. That one was in my career. I knew exactly what was going to happen, almost exactly. We were going to lose these 4 clients. These 3 clients were going to go soft or all that kind of stuff. Well, what happened was, every time there's a market change, if you need to look at your business model, because we cannot imagine that the business model that worked before a correction will work after a correction, particularly for small business. And so we started looking at the business model, and I stripped all these expenses out. My whole goal was to keep people as long as I possibly could, even though we knew that it was going to dry up fast. And we realized that this model of only hiring people with 10 years of experience was soon going to be irrelevant, because between 2000 and 2004, almost no one got hired in San Francisco in my business. So there was a big donut hole of people with 10 years of experience, because 2012 was coming, 2010 was coming up, and there was nobody from 2010 to 2015 with 10 years of experience.
Right.
And if you're not bringing new blood at the bottom level of your company, you need to be bringing a lot of new blood at the bottom level of your company, and all the time, regularly, in my size of company, 1 or 2 or 3 a year. So to stay relevant, we were going to run out of those people. So we decided to change our model and to bring in recent graduates and start growing our own. And that was when, and I had my 2 previous jobs, 600 and 700 people in my groups. And I didn't even think about it, Adrian.
Wow.
I was like, this won't be a problem. Just hire the first one. So we hired this great woman. She's fantastic. And her first day, she brought this dog to work. And I got in a little late that day from a meeting. I was like, why is a dog here?
She brought it literally in the office?
Oh, well, not just the dog, but the bed and the filtered water, the kibble dispenser. And please understand, this woman is fantastic. She's so great.
Okay.
But I said, did anybody know the dog was coming? No. Did she ask? No. Is anybody allergic to dogs? No. Well, it's a service dog, Lee. It had a red vest on. I said, well, that dog's a Chihuahua. That dog is not.
Oh, it was a Chihuahua. Oh,
yeah, not helping me through the door, right? I mean, not making sure I'm safe. So, and this was just, of course, she had a dog. It was a service dog. She had a, little red vest on. And of course, she was going to take it to the office. This was the attitude. Like, she didn't even think that it would be a question. And it's not, it was a question to me, but, and I sort of was befuddled. I'm like, what just happened? What the heck? And I really didn't know what millennials were. I didn't know it was a term.
Right.
And I just called a friend of mine in the city who also runs a farm, but different model than ours. And I said, this just happened. Oh, Lee, you are in for it. These people, they're terrible. He was just
those
over
people.
the edge.
That's
those
funny.
People. I said, these millennials. And I'm like, what's a millennial? I don't even know what that was.
Right.
So, well, I was like, okay, well, first of all, it seems a little drastic that you think all millennials suck, but, but whatever. And, but, I think it's true across the country, but in San Francisco, if the dog has a red vest, you can't ask them to leave. So we were just like, we'll just have to suck it up, and all right, fine.
Oh, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yes, service dogs.
Okay.
And two things happened. One is I sort of like dismissed what my friend said. I was like, oh, you were a bad attitude, man. I can't talk to you. And two was by the end of the first month of her time, we had like 8 or 9 dogs in the office because she ran this little side business of how to get your dog with a red vest. So everyone else brought their dogs in. It's like, what the heck just happened here? And the second thing was, she started bringing all these ideas, tons and tons of ideas to the place, and they sort of didn't fit, right? They just didn't fit, or she would be what I thought was inappropriate, or she would be, she didn't know she was being rude and all these things. And people started grumbling about her. And I was like, she doesn't know. Like, just tell her what to do. I mean, just tell her what's polite and what's not, and just, But there was just a ton of grumbling, particularly around, we had boomers and Xers in our team. And they're like, well, who does she think she is? And all this kind of stuff. And, but she was so great, people sort of glossed over it. Then about 9 months later, we hired 6 millennials within about 2 months of each other. Okay. And within 3 months, they all failed. All 6 of them. And I've never had 100% failure in my career in recruiting. And one person could be their fault, maybe 2, but 6 had to be our fault. And what were we doing wrong? I mean, what were we doing wrong with these people? Because we are really picky about who we hire. And it's not like we just let anybody, hey, you got a pulse, come on in here. No, we have a whole process of getting someone into the firm. So the fact that these 6 people failed, I took it as a big failure on my part. And so what I did was start researching millennials. Like, what's so different about them? Why can't we work with these people? And almost everything I read, Adrian, was so negative. Today, if you Googled it, you find almost 2 million negative entries about working with millennials.
Oh, yeah, of course. I know.
At least, right?
Yes, yeah.
And all these stereotypes. Oh, they're entitled. They're a me generation. They're job hoppers. Right. They want, trophies for showing up and all this kind of stuff. Right. And here's the truth, right? If you don't have a millennial in your business, you don't have a future in your business.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, you might as well just roll up the door. So I sort of set out to be positive about it, and I sort of discarded all the negative stuff, meaning, there was a lot of advice on, tolerating people. And I don't want to tolerate who my future is. I want to help them get as far as they can so that will help me in my business too. Right. So I just sort of, so I became one. I started talking to millennials all the time, and they would ask me questions. It was almost like a reverse mentoring situation. I literally was talking to millennials wherever I could, in my office, on the phone, in the bus station, on the BART, whatever. And,
now, did you kind of go about like perception or how they looked, or you just?
Well, I'm a little older. So. But I also, I asked my friends to introduce me to their millennials in their office. Right. That kind of thing. And so I talked to a lot of them, and some of the stuff was just them being, ignorant is a loaded word, but just unaware, right? And some of it came with sort of their expectations coming out of high school and college, and some of it came out of helicopter parents and all this kinds of stuff. Right. So my goal was to find a way to be positive about it, because I don't want to come to work if I'm dreading it. Right. I got at least 10 years to go in my career. I've got time to spend, and I want to have a good time with the people who are working with me and I'm working with. So how could I be positive about it so that we didn't lower our expectations, which everyone sort of worries about? Oh my gosh, if you cater to the millennials, you'll lower your standards. And I think that's categorically false. How do you keep your standards and improve your standards, and also do it in a way that honors all the generations in the office? And that was my goal. And out of it, I really didn't have an intention to write the book until someone said, you should write a book about this, Lee. It's working. And, oh, wow. And then I had several clients who, our point of view as an agency is that your first customer, your first audience is your employees, and you shouldn't bother trying to get new customers until your employees are on board. So a lot of our work is in employee communication, and a lot of my personal work in the agency was with advising my clients, C-level people, about these strange people in their office called millennials, and why weren't they working the same way as everybody else.
Right.
And one of my clients just said, you should write a book about this. So I did.
Wow. How long did it take for you to write the book?
It didn't take as long. It's going to be I'm going to tell you, and it's really short. It took me 3 months, but the reason it took me 3 months is because the back half of the book is the how-to piece.
Okay.
And we had figured that out already. We had these things we had figured out in the office,
Wow.
our standard operating procedures that I was able to sort of, start with. So I did not start from scratch when I wrote it in 3 months.
3 months is, that is amazing. That is amazing. Now, I can't remember, is it self-published or did you go with a traditional publisher?
No, I have a traditional publisher. It's Bibliomotion.
Okay.
It's a business book publisher out of Boston.
Okay. That's great. 3 months, you write this book. Wow. So let's talk about that. You mentioned the stereotypes, right? You mentioned the bringing in the Chihuahua. You mentioned hiring those 6 millennials and they all failing. Now there are, as you pointed out, in my own personal and professional work that I do, especially focusing on my generation. But I can't and shouldn't I do that in a vacuum without thinking about cross generations. But it's interesting, even like when my generation were in our 20s, like we were the millennials of the time, the same type of negative stereotype. It's a cycle. I mean, if you go back to even the greatest generation, the traditionals, the boomers, I mean, those rock and roll kids listening to Elvis Presley. It's like, oh my God, they're so bad. They're evil. So it goes in cycles. Now I would say because of the sheer numbers of millennials, I mean, they're pretty much hitting 80 million strong now. It's just, and because of the internet now and communication, it's just broadly out there. What would you say, especially to the audience that's listening, because I think this is really important for Gen Xers as leaders of millennials or wanting to become better leaders. What are some of the common characteristics of millennials that you feel are true, and what are some of the misconceptions?
Sure. So I think that the first one is that they're entitled.
Okay.
And this is what boomers and silence said about Gen Xers when Gen Xers were 20, 25.
Right.
For sure. Right. And it's a very, I can talk about the dynamics of the two generations. My opinion is, after looking at it and talking to over 1,000 millennials and just hundreds and hundreds of other people, is that millennials are not entitled as like a whole generation can't be entitled, right? Right. How's that possible? But the ones we're talking about are conditioned. They have been conditioned by their school system. They've been conditioned by grade inflation. In the last 15 years, the average grade in colleges has risen almost a full point, which is why you have 4.5s on a 4.0 scale across the country. Well, that is dumb. That just sets up a bad expectation of when you get into the office, my work is fabulous. Well, not really. Right. It's actually a 3.8, not a 4.5. Right. And so that grade inflation thing has done nobody any favors. Number one. Number two is this, Nobody loses soccer is a great idea for kids from 3 years old to maybe 7 years old.
Everyone gets a trophy. I have a 6-year-old, so
so you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
Trophy's bigger than your 6-year-old, I'm sure.
Everyone gets a trophy.
Oh my gosh, my son hated soccer. He had so many badges and things from soccer, which he was only in for 3 years. And he's like, get rid of this stuff. I'm like, but let's take pictures. Let's put it on the wall. I was so excited about it more than he was.
No, you're absolutely
so that's just terrible too. And that happens. That actually happens all the way through college still. There's things that people, showing up is not a skill. There should not be a trophy for just like appearing, you know? Right. But it's not like that expectation came out of nowhere. It came out of, soccer, high school, college, all these things. And we haven't done a good job as parents, weaning ourselves off of this everybody is a precious snowflake thing, right? Right. And then helicopter parents. I mean, this is a generation, boomers and some older Xers, this is a generation of helicopter parents. And what we see what I mean by that is we see all the time adult children showing up with their parents to job interviews. Parents of adult children calling and saying, I've had this happen to me. Hi, Lee. Joe has an interview there today. Well, I'm not having the interview, but okay. Well, why wouldn't you have the interview with the president? I'm like, exactly. That's why I wouldn't have the interview. But, well, he can't come. He's another interview that time. Can I do it for him? Because I know what he's going to say.
Wow.
This is crazy. But this is happening all over the country, right? That is not their fault. The kid is that the parent actually picks up the phone and doesn't kick that kid in the butt and say, go do it yourself.
Right.
That's not the kid's fault.
So what created
I think it's entitled.
Well, what do you think? What created the helicopter parent? I mean, and
my theory is, I have a theory. My theory is that it's guilty parents.
Okay.
Guilty parents who are so super busy that they haven't been able to spend time with their children. And I saw it with my own. So I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I saw it with my older child. When he was, I guess, in 5th grade, I became this I became this person. And it was just easier for me. I'm a working mom. It was easier for me to fix it than it was to coach him through fixing it himself. So, he had this problem at school. I'm like, oh, I'll take care of that, Michael. And I fixed it in half an hour.
Right.
If I had to coach him, because I knew it was going to take me 12 hours of agony to coach him through to the same result. Well, I did this for a few times, and then one day, a couple months into this, he came to me and said, Mom, can you go fix that for me? And I was like, oh, that hit me over the head. Like, holy cannoli, what did I just do?
Right.
And so I had to unravel this expectation that I would go fix things for my child. So I think maybe it's just not having enough time.
Yeah.
Like, it does take time to parent well.
No,
it is a job.
I will double down on that. I mean, I'm guilty. I'm guilty as well as I work harder to try not to, but I think to your point, as a Gen Xer, I was literally a latchkey Gen Xer. My mom, my parents were divorced when I was 7. My mom worked. I got off the bus with a key around my neck on a shoestring, let myself in. My goodness. I watched Popeye and whatever for like 2 hours and my food was ready in the refrigerator until my mom came home. Now, I think growing up, when we have parents for my generation, even the younger boomers, we try to overcompensate for that.
I think so.
And now we live in this era of, after school programs. And I mean, it's, but you can't go back, but you have to adjust and you have to try to correct. You have to adjust. Like, there's no way. I mean, we're no longer is the era of riding your bike in the neighborhood without a helmet or even
CPS will be called.
I know. So
you're like, ride without a helmet.
I know.
He's 18.
I know. And but it's actually, I'm glad you brought that up too, because that is something that I'm passionate about, and I really got into it. This whole generational conversation with my last employer when I worked for Cartoon Network. So we actually had someone come in, because our job was to help tell market stories to 6 to 14-year-olds. So they were the Gen Zs, basically.
Gen Zs, yeah.
So we had a researcher come in and do this big presentation to the marketing team about the different generations, Gen Zs, Gen Y. They didn't get into Generation Alpha yet, which is the next ones after Zs, which is going to be interesting.
Please.
But I know. But
they're in utero right now, though.
I know, right? So, but in that time, I was fascinated because I'm a student of history, and I just thought it was fascinating, and I had to learn about Gen Zs, but in that conversation, I learned a lot about helicopter parents and why we do what we do. So, to your point, I would agree with that theory. I think that millennials, because they feel entitled, especially in the workforce, you have to really think about, as leaders, how do you communicate to them? And even in my own personal experience working with millennials, I had to learn from it. I was not always the best leader, I admit. I mean, when I worked, for example, at my last company, my first day on the job, I had a team about 4 or 5, and majority of them, I would say half of them were millennials. The first day, one of the people that happened to work under me at the time, I said, hey, I'm glad to hear. Can we go out to lunch, or can we go, the first day, can we go grab lunch and just talk about your vision? And it took me aback, and I didn't take advantage of it like I should have, because I wasn't used to that type of conversation. And what this person was doing, being the millennial that he is, he was really focused on relational building.
Absolutely.
Building. And so I'm curious to hear your point of view on that.
Well, that is interesting because, one of the things that millennials get accused of is being a me generation. So you might consider, so this guy asked you about your vision. Maybe it was all about him. Right. My experience is very different. My experience is that millennials are really a we generation. I mean, the first thing you can do to get eye roll is say, Sally, you didn't do a great job with that. You really didn't live up to your potential. All the eyes start rolling very quickly, and because she does not care what I think about her potential. Right. Care less. It's all about how she feels about herself. Right. So, but if I say to her, you didn't do a good job, Sally, and you let the team down, oh my goodness, in the fetal position, in the corner with the lip blubbering. And because it's about that team dynamic, the relationship people have with the people around them, right? And that's from a management's perspective where I always start. I always start with who else is counting on you? What is your role in this group? And who else? What are those people's roles, and how is it all interdependent? Because when people understand that their being there has an impact on other people and how it all works, all of a sudden, you get the light bulb goes off and everyone sort of stops complaining because they get that their world impacts other people's worlds. And if you don't hold your corner of it up, everyone else is going to point the finger, right? No one likes that piece. And this hyper communication, hyper relationship thing is really real. And the other thing, what I think really interesting about what you said is that, that expectation that day one you would have a vision, right? They're looking to you for leadership. They were looking to you for like, where are we going? Right. What's that path we're going to take? Well, of course, day one, you're going to know that. Right. But that is the expectation because that's what they've been fed.
Right. All right.
Number one. Right. And number two, I think, too, is that they want to know they're hitched their star to someone who's going to look out for them and, and carve a good path because opportunity is super, super important for this generation. You have to remember that there are really three kinds of millennials. The first set of millennials, 28 to 35-year-olds, these people came into the marketplace after 9/11. So their whole sense of security and privacy is very different from the Gen Xer because the Gen Xer and the boomers, that whole security and privacy got imposed on them. They didn't grow into it. That got changed for them. Right. But the 28 to 35-year-old, they grew up with that. The 22 to 27-year-old, these people came into the market after 2008. Well, there are millions of millennials who are still waiting for their job opportunity to match their expectation from their education. Because this is the most educated generation in our history, in American history, not just by percentage, but therefore by sheer number, right? Right. So they have expectation. You get a college degree, you have an expectation. Well, the market hasn't been able to accommodate those expectations. And then you have, so that people are sort of catching up there, right? And then you have 14 or 15-year-olds to 21-year-olds. They're in school, but they're learning. The iPad did not exist for the 28 to 23 to 35-year-old. These kids are learning on iPads. My older son doesn't have a single textbook. He's in high school. Yeah. Right? Yes. Well, the 28 to 35-year-olds had textbooks, right? So just think about in that one generation, it's almost a disservice to call it one generation because there's so many different conditions there. Yeah. Yeah. So, but the opportunity, and that's one piece. And then the other piece of that is millennials have watched Gen Xers and boomers lose everything. They watched their parents lose their jobs. They've watched their parents and their uncles and their friends and the people on the street, whatever, lose their savings and lose their retirement funds. And they know, and they've been told their whole lives, don't count on that one company. Don't put your eggs in one basket. So they get into the job market and they know they're going to have to carve their own career. They know they're going to have to figure it out themselves. So they want to hitch themselves to people who are going to provide opportunity, create greatness. Right. So I'm not surprised that they asked you that. Right. I would have been surprised myself because I was surprised when they said to me, "What's your plan?" I'm like, I don't know, come tomorrow. But now I understand it, right? Because they're like, they're picky about where they work. They'd rather, for them, we also hear a lot in recruiting. How many volunteer days do I get a year? What is your community activism policy? What community projects do you do as a volunteer day? Blah, blah, blah. I never would even imagine saying those things. And most Gen Xers would not have imagined asking those things either. Like, What do you mean volunteer days? Do I get a holiday? I mean, can I get out? I just want to get home. But this is part of the currency for these people having grown up. So it makes sense when you put all those pieces together. And the first part of my book is all about those pieces. And I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be a scientist or anthropologist or whatever. But I've talked to a lot of people who are knowledgeable and sort of put together the condition. Because I think once you understand the condition, then you can adjust. But it's putting these, like, the worst word you can use, the word I know, there's a problem when I go into a workshop with people is when I hear the word should. They should know. They should know not to do this. They should know not to ask me that question. And that should word is so loaded because they don't. And it's not their fault. So, you just have to sort of get over it, right? And I think for Gen Xers, and I realize I'm talking without letting you talk.
That's just fine.
But Gen Xers,
if you weren't saying anything of value, then it will be a problem. But you're dropping some great stuff here.
I can't hear you, Lee. That's a terrible connection.
No, it's great.
Oh my goodness. But I think the Gen Xers, and I mean this, the Gen X generation, there was a moment in time in 98, 99, 2000 before the market crashed where it was a golden moment for the Gen X. It was so golden.
Oh, yes.
If you had a pulse, you got hired. People were catering left and right to this. And there was a moment in time, but really you got screwed. Really, the generation's been screwed because one, we have boomers are almost, 78 million boomers, 80 million millennials, right? Big generations, 47, 48 million Gen Xers. Well, that's really small. Right. And so technically, if you just think about sheer numbers, that should mean a huge amount of opportunity for Gen Xers. Is what it should mean. What it has meant, though, is that because of the economy if you think particularly on the coasts between, 2000 to 2001, 2000 when the NASDAQ crashed and then 2001, 9/11, everything happened around there. And then 2008, 2009, right, Great Recession, is that the Gen Xers have gotten caught by their age in those two big downturns.
Right.
So before they're even 35, 40 years old, before they're even 40 years old, Gen Xers have been two huge downturns. Well, I'm 51. I've been through four. But, when I was my first one, I had $1 to my name. Who cares? At 2008, I had a lot more dollars. I cared a lot. Right. But Gen Xers have really been in that moment of time in their careers where they're just getting off the ground and then really coming into their own. The economy has just deep sixed them twice. And what has that meant for the other generations is that the boomers are staying in work longer, right? I interviewed lots of people, lots of boomers who were ready to retire in 2008, who are just now retiring in 2015.
Right.
They've stayed in the job market 7 years longer if they could, hanging on for dear life, some of them, right? Well, that meant there was no elevation for the Gen Xers who were behind them, right? I mean, you see that all over the place. The Gen X group got pushed or got stagnated, right? If they didn't lose their job, they got stagnated. At the same time as a tsunami of millennials are coming into the job place, and they're cheap. They're cheap comparatively. So although the numbers are in the favor for Gen Xers, because it should mean that there's just ample opportunity for leadership in large organizations for the Gen X group, it hasn't meant that because of what the economy has done to our just to the marketplace in general, just to commercial business.
Yeah, that's one of the things that a major thing that we talk about on this podcast, and then what I do, in my work with helping to kind of reframe the conversation about Gen X, because to that point, just look at the sheer numbers, 80 million, 77 million, and you have 40, depending upon which list, how you count which years. But I would say that that's the main reason why I really encourage Gen Xers to really dig in deep and define and find the strength of their story, and look at entrepreneurial opportunities too. Because to your point, the influx of millennials that have come into the workforce, it has put a lot of pressure. It has made many Gen Xers fearful of their jobs. I mean, I've been laid off. I mean, I was laid off from my last job. May not have been necessarily because of an influx of millennials, but it's just the sheer state of the economy with that. And I'm sure you would agree. In this day and age, in this new media marketplace, what I call it, I say, and the reason for this, why this platform, this podcast exists as a movement, is to help Gen Xers first understand where they are. Yes, they're squeezed between these two large and important and powerful generations, but you're powerful and important too. Let's absolutely take a step back, find the strength of your expertise and your experience and the opportunities that you have now with these tools to possibly look at side gig opportunities or look at starting your own business. Or let's say that you still want to be in that corporate environment and work with the millennials. Well, go read Lee's book, go listen to this podcast, figure out how to become a better leader of those millennials, and then maybe you'll have a better shot. But to your point, it's grim. And then also, the Gen Xers are raising the next generation for the Gen Zs. Yeah. That's brands are already now clamoring for. So our influence on the next big generation is so immediate. So I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to have people like you on, and to read the books that you've written, is to really understand all the different nuances of those generations. So, I applaud you for that.
Thank you. I think for the Gen X, I think the big, if you ask a Gen Xer in general, because I did, who's more entitled, millennials or boomers? Most Gen Xers I talked to said boomers. So just keep that in perspective, number one. Yeah. Right. And number two is, if you can, what's interesting is, in the workplace, there's a lot of, I got a lot of bitter boomers. I talked to a lot of bitter boomers. I
like the way you said
bitter boomers, man.
That's a T-shirt, right?
Who are very disgruntled about the fact that their younger colleagues are getting the same perks that they worked really hard for, right? Yeah. Particularly working moms. Right. In the last 25 years, all you've heard, the whole dialogue was work-life balance, equal access, kind of stuff, right? And they're getting to the workplace, and the 25-year-old young woman is sitting next to a 55-year-old woman, and she's leaving at 4 o'clock for yoga, and the same time as the 55-year-old is leaving for 4 o'clock to get home to her kids. And, why doesn't she have to earn it, right? And this is what I tell these women, and I can do it because I'm 50. I am a boomer, but I try my hardest not to be bitter, is, get over yourself. You worked this hard to make it better for the people behind you. That's the burden of being a pioneer. Right. The difference is, there's no continental divide between us. We're sitting right next to each other, right, and we're not waiting for the covered wagon. We're waiting for the BART to get to us, right? So they're sitting right here. And get over yourself. And I think that what I find the most, one, people sort of scowl at me when I say that, but then we talk, and then usually I get people over to my side of you have to be positive. If you can't be positive every day, you're just not going to get as far. Exactly. And what I say to my Gen X friends and people who ask is, if you can just have a positive outlook, if you can just say, this is the condition I'm in, and I'm going to move from here, as opposed to saying, this sucks. I hate this condition I'm in. Boy, it's really bad that I'm in this condition. Right? If you just have that positive outlook that I have opportunity, because you do, people will want to hook themselves to you. Younger people are going to want to hook yourselves to you. And the most relevant you can be in the business place, the most relevant you can be is being known for working with younger colleagues. Wow. Period. And if you can be known for working with younger colleagues, then your opportunity is endless. But you have the good, positive attitude about it, right? You just have to say, you have to laugh it off as opposed to scowl it off. Right. And that takes an attitude adjustment for some people. But that's the big, just sort of shake it off, man. You just got to go forward. And I have those moments too. I'm like, oh my gosh, can we just know that we should use our napkin at the table? And I just, I sort of want to just cringe, but they just don't know. Wow. They just don't know. Wow. So if I can wake, I sort of Have that point of view. If you can just have a positive attitude, you're going to have so much more opportunity, truly. And your relevance in the business, in the workplace, no matter if you're your own business or in a big company, is around being able to work positively with the people who are much younger than you.
Did you hear that, Xers? Work positively, I should say, with people who are younger. I love that. Shake it off, get over it, but in a good way. It's that
in a good way.
In a great way. You know, you have to work with everyone. You have to work with the younger. They're not going anywhere. Millennials aren't going anywhere.
They keep coming.
The Zs are coming. The Alphas are coming. We'll be going to college graduations on the moon in 50 years.
I'll see you there.
I know. I just had a joke. Told a joke the other day because I actually just had a daughter. She was just born. Literally.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And yeah, it's crazy.
Getting any sleep?
No, I've been dozing off. Actually, no, I'm just kidding. I've been very alert, and I've been so alert. I can talk about. I just realized we've been talking for a long time, but when I talk about generational stuff, this is what happens. So this is probably one of the longer episodes, but probably one of the most, if not the most fruitful. So, but I was gonna say that I was telling this joke about my daughter Kaylin, who I just mentioned, who was just born, the world that first of all, I have a 6-year-old son, and being a generational guy, this is cool, having these younger kids, and I can't imagine her perspective in school. I can't even, and I say this all the time, what we're doing right now, we're creating content, we're building businesses, you've written books. I'm going to start on my book this year.
Awesome.
Thank you. We're both the things that we're doing, Lee, our children's children will be listening and watching and reading this stuff. It's because of the content. So this is great stuff. So we got to wrap up, but there are 2 questions that I don't want to leave without asking you. The first one is just to get a little bit more insight into your personality, and then the last one is just to end off and put the cherry on top with some more value. So number 1, so Lee, if there was a song that would play every time you enter a room or when you walk down the street that fits the story of Lee and your brand, what song would that be? What would be your own personal theme song?
My theme song, my walk-up song, as we say in baseball, is "What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger" by Kelly Clarkson.
Oh, it's a great choice. Okay. And why that song?
Because it's part of, when you're an entrepreneur, it is not easy going, and you sort of have to just pick yourself up after something, in every disappointment is opportunity. And if you need to have that point of view to be an entrepreneur and keep going.
That is so true.
That's actually my ringtone, and my ringtone for when my clients call.
Okay, so that's really that is really your personal theme song.
It really is my theme song.
No, I love it. That's why I love that question, because it really,
it's a great question.
It speaks to your brand. Okay, I like to now that song's going to be in my head all day. All right. So, and then lastly, Lee, if there was one resource or tool that you would recommend, particularly to Gen Xers, leaders looking to better lead in the workforce, better lead millennials, become better in tune with their personal development. It can be a mobile app, it can be a book or a website or what have you. What would you recommend?
So other than my own book, what I would recommend the book Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman.
Okay.
It is fantastic. It is seminal to my own work, and it just gives you so much awareness about your own space and how you get to choose how you're going to lead, and you get to choose and you should choose how to lead in different ways for different situations. And it really is seminal to my own being.
Great, Daniel Goleman. I would definitely we'll check that out. Everyone, if you're listening, we'll have that link in the show notes.
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Lee, it's been one of the best and valuable conversations I've had in a while. I love talking about millennials. I love talking about Gen Xers. Good stuff, Lee. Tell everyone.
Such a pleasure.
Oh, it's been great. Tell everyone that's listening in what's the best way they can hear more about you, what you're doing, and maybe even connect directly with you.
Sure. The best place to go is leecaraher.com/GenXA. And I'll have all those links too on my own site for you guys with it. And I'll have an infographic based on our conversation that you can download and just have for yourself as a reminder.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure my audience will definitely enjoy that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your story, talking about those millennials and bacon and socks and chihuahuas and all that.
Oh my gosh. It sounds like a crazy lady. I know.
No, it's all good. No, but you're not bitter. You're
I'm not bitter.
I was trying to think of another adjective. Better, bitter. I don't know. You're just fabulous. How about that?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I love it.
Thanks so much, Adrian.
Okay, that was Lee Caraher of Double Forte and the author of Millennials and Management, The Essential Guide to Making It Work at Work. A great conversation about those magnificent millennials. Good stuff. So I want to thank Lee for spending time with us and allowing me to have that real meaty conversation about generations, millennials, boomers, Gen Xers. I really do love this stuff. But more importantly, I hope that you got a lot out of the conversation, especially as Gen Xers, as Gen X leaders and business owners. But if you did, you can go over to genxamplified.com/013 for the links and the resources that we discuss. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the podcast, you definitely want to go and do that so you can have all of the episodes delivered right to you each and every time. So please go over to iTunes and subscribe, or Stitcher Radio, and also give us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. It only takes a few minutes, but it definitely helps with getting the word out about the podcast. So again, thank you so much for listening. And you don't have to stop there, though. You can keep listening. And in fact, if you missed our previous episode with Jason Swank, episode number 12, you definitely want to give it a listen, because it was a really informative conversation about some things that every leader and business owner should focus on. Building the right systems in your business and why you should really niche down your target audience. So until the next time you listen in, and until the next time I am in your earbuds, go on and define the greatness of your story, amplify that story, and your exceptional brand so you, Gen Xers, can maximize your impact in business and in life. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And as always, all the best to your success. Take care.